Hello Team FD and welcome back to Winners and Losers, where we break down the latest and greatest World Cup action. Joining me to talk about Spain's next golden generation, who look like they've well and truly arrived after thumping Costa Rica in their World Cup opener, is Joseph Tomlinson. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right after watching that. Costa Rica were good, weren't they? What was that? They were pathetic, Costa Rica out there.
I think that's being kind. Absolutely toothless, weren't they? I mean, this stat sums it all up. 17 shots to 0 at full time. Absolutely harrowing stuff if you're a Costa Rican fan. But let's not beat up on them.
I mean, we should a bit, because they are embarrassing.
Okay, let's beat up on them. Now, let's move on to Spain's new golden age then, because at the heart of this performance was Gavi, was Pedri. We had a supporting cast of Alejandro Balde, Nico Williams. Fati didn't even come on, neither did Pino, neither did Eric Garcia. Spain, of course, have the third youngest squad at the World Cup. Now, I don't think anyone expects them to win this tournament, but there is a crop of very promising talent emerging who could use this, let's say, as a platform to build for the US, Mexico and Canada in 2026. Right, let's break down some of the numbers then. And let's start with Gavi, because he was purring for the whole 90, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, the whole of that unit was put. There's a lovely balance to that team, isn't there? A mixture of young players and more senior players, the likes of Azpilicueta, the likes of Sergi Busquets. A lot of people, deriding Sergi Busquets before kickoff and saying Rodri should be starting in that role. Maybe that's your thinking, but obviously Luis Enrique knows he's going to completely dominate the ball. Over 1,000 attempted passes today against Costa Rica, and by playing Rodri as a defensive, centre-back, it allows him to dominate it even more. But like you said, Gavi, given that he only turned 18 in August, is frightening. The finish is outrageous. The balance between him and Pedri is lovely, isn't it? When I first saw the team sheet, I thought the front three was a bit sus. I'm not going to lie, I was not massively convinced about the front three on paper. I think in my previews I said, who's going to get in the goals? Well, they're going to spread the goals around, aren't they? Clearly, because, the finish from Gavi's outrageous. Ferran took his very nicely. Asensio took his lovely. When Morata came on, took his well, and he didn't start, reportedly because there'd been flu in the training camp in the build-up to this one. But I just think the balance of this team is beautiful, and it does help when you've got, by far and away, not even close, the best manager at the competition.
I don't know. What about Louis van Gaal? He might have something to say about that.
It's not 19.
Although that match against Senegal was pretty harrowing to watch, wasn't it? Into the dying embers of that fixture. Okay, let's get through some other names then and pay them lip service, because, Pedri, I think we take his form for granted at this point. Maybe wasn't the standout in this fixture, but his athleticism, vital for covering older legs like Jordi Alba. I imagine the further we get into this competition, he will become more prominent in that sense. It was great to see Nico Williams come on. I've heard a lot of noise emanating, coming out of Spain about him, owing to the performances he's been putting in at Athletic Bilbao this season. He normally plays on the right of a 4-2-3-1. 6 goals and assists in 14 starts this season. And his numbers over the last 365 days for midfielders in his position, pretty frightening. In the top 1% for dribbles, touches in the opposition penalty area, progressive passes received in the top 10% for non-penalty XG, for shots per 90. So, like you said, Spain might not have a lights-out number 9, but my God, everything else, that attacking roster behind it, pretty alarming. You've got Robert Sanchez and Unai Simon, both 25, relatively young for keepers. And some of the aforementioned names who we don't need to go over now. Just bodes really well for the future. What does success look like for Spain, in your opinion, at this tournament? Then how far do they have to get before people say, yep, Luis Enrique, another great innings from him, let's give him to the next World Cup and see what he can do there?
They may be slightly unlucky at the Euros, weren't they, to get knocked out by Italy, a very sort of defensively astute Italian side that obviously turned England over as well. So far this tournament, let's have it right, this is the best team we've seen. Spain are the best team we have seen so far at the tournament. I think England and France pushed them quite close, but this was a total domination of the 90 minutes. To have over 80% of the ball in a World Cup match and concede 0 shots is almost unheard of, even for a quality of team like Spain. I have absolutely no doubt that this team can go deep, and I probably think they can go even deeper than I originally thought after watching that game. I think I had them going to the semi-finals against England and losing, but that would be them finishing second in the group. If you finish top of this group, you're likely to actually go on to the harder side of the draw, which is Brazil and Argentina's side. That's if Argentina top their group, of course. So it's going to be very, very interesting, because if they do top it, that means they're going to be meeting probably Brazil at semi-final, which is a huge game.
A heavyweight clash. I will say, conversely, Costa Rica and Iran, the worst teams we've seen so far at this tournament. I mean, Costa Rica actually came into this tournament having conceded the second fewest goals in CONCACAF qualification. However, a lot of that was down to the individual performance of Keylor Navas, who I think kept out 5 more goals than post-XG, 6 even, than post-XG would have dictated. But yeah, he was pretty bad in this game too.
Stinking.
Miscommunication with his centre-halves. Just made to look bang average, which he's definitely not. Okay, let's move on to Marcus Asensio. Now, I'd crowbarred this into the end of the script, because he was linked with Manchester United about 6 months ago. And he comes into this tournament as one of the most high-profile players to be using this tournament to put themselves in the shop window, let's say. Now, the 26-year-old deal is up in 2023. Contract talks stalled before the World Cup began. I think Jorge Mendes is his agent. He was demanding more in terms of wages from Real Madrid, and Florentino Perez wasn't willing to budge. So, like I said, a lot of friction there. I think only 1 start in La Liga this season, which has been telling. Had his most proficient, deadly season in front of goal last campaign, when he scored 12 in all competitions. Yeah, not really replicated that, not really carried on with that momentum in this campaign. But would you take someone like him at United?
No. United don't need.
If he scores 3 or 4 goals at this World Cup, though, do you think he gets a big move?
I think he'll get a fine move anyway. I don't think he's going to go to a super club, Marco Asensio. I think when he was slightly younger in his career, when he signed that last big contract, his trajectory was to be one of the best players in the world. He was flying at Real Madrid early doors, and he really levelled out. And he's levelled out badly over the last couple of years. And that's partly down to a lack of game time, of course. It is hard when you've got some of the talents in front of you that have been there over the last few years, Karim Benzema, Cristiano Ronaldo and co. But I don't think Manchester United will be particularly interested in Marco Asensio. I think they're going to be looking for an out-and-out number 9, although Asensio can be used, as we've seen Luis Enrique float him into that central area today, kind of combining with Ferran Torres in there. I can't imagine a world in which Marco Asensio ends up at Manchester United. That would be a real shocker for me, given that he already done 80 million on a right winger in Antony.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Luis Enrique isn't averse to a false 9, but still quite surprising to see Marcus Asensio take up those central areas when he'd only scored 1 goal in 31 appearances prior to this for Spain.
Do you think if Spain come up against a bigger nation, no offence to Costa Rica, who were utter rubbish today, but if they come up against France or they come up against a Brazil, they can afford to play with that front line without having Morata up there? And can they afford to play the 2 centre-backs that they played? Can they play Rodri against Kylian Mbappe at centre-half?
Well, it's interesting, because I wanted to ask you the same question as well about the full-backs. Now, I've already mentioned that Pedri covers for some of Jordi Alba's ailments, is maybe his inability to get up and down in the same sense that he did. But maybe Rodri is the slightly more defensively assured option at CDM, although I just can't imagine a world where Busquets isn't the centrepiece of that side.
But does that mean you drop him from centre-back and he plays somebody like Eric Garcia in there, who is also young but has a more natural central defensive instinct?
I mean, Eric Garcia, again, I think he's only started around 60% of Barcelona's league games so far this season, so hardly a mainstay for them either. Pau Torres is obviously in the ranks as well, although Villarreal not at their, not the most defensively sound at the start of the season before Unai Emery left. So I guess what we saw here was Luis Enrique try to solve that issue, right, or try and approach it in a different way. And maybe we will see some consistency on that front, and Rodri will start at centre-half. Whether, Alba and Azpilicueta will be as adventurous against the top sides, I'm not so sure. And we may see, I don't know, some wild cards in those wide areas as well, because Dani Olmo can be a false 9, can't he? We saw that a few times.
His goal so well.
Saw that at the Euros, so maybe Asensio drops out, then maybe you put someone slightly more athletic on the left-hand side. It's a good question. What do you guys at home think? How does Spain line up against bigger sides in this tournament? Because we didn't actually learn a massive amount about them in this fixture, other than they've got really good youngsters who are progressing at a rate of knots. That is it for today's episode of Winners and Losers. Keep your eyes peeled for some shorts that will be populating your timeline very soon. Like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on, and we'll catch you next time.